Some of my favorite conversations have happened over the rims of mugs. I'm Denise Harper, co-host of The Bridge Morning Show with Denise and Chris, and program director for The Bridge. There's something special about sitting across the table from a friend, whether we've known them forever or for just a minute, with a good cup of coffee and an open heart. I hope today's conversation will inspire and encourage you. Hi, friend. Welcome to another episode of Over the Rims of Mugs. I'm your host, Denise Harper, and it is always a pleasure and an honor to get to have a cup of coffee or tea with a friend and find out more of your story. And so my guest today is Beth Fritzeen. Mm-hmm. Welcome, Beth.
Thank you for having me.
You know what? We get to work together, and I love that I don't see you nearly enough, but something that you shared with not just me, but our whole team a few weeks ago really sparked a thought that there was a story to be shared, and it involves chocolate chip cookies, of which you are the queen of the baking chocolate chip cookies. We discovered right after you came here, I think, your talents, hidden talents. There's probably way more that we have yet to discover. But I'm so glad that you would sit down with me for a little bit and talk about your story. Tell me how you came to Delaware.
Well, first I want to share John 16:33.
Okay.
I have told you these things so that in me you may have peace. In this world you will have trouble, but take heart, I have overcome the world.
So good.
So, leading up to moving to Delaware in 2018, I entered into a season that was very mixed with joy and sorrow. In March of 2018, I lost my mom. And then in April, I found out my husband had been unfaithful. In May, my oldest daughter graduated, oldest and only daughter graduated from college.
Wow.
In June, our youngest son graduated from high school. In July, that only oldest daughter got married. In August, we became empty nesters. And then in September, we decided to move to Delaware to make a fresh start.
Wow.
Yeah, so it was a season full of really, really special moments, but kind of an undercurrent of really deep sadness.
Yeah.
So
when you came to Delaware, what were you doing?
So my husband's dream had been to open a gym. So we moved down here and opened a gym. And it was, felt kind of like the Wild West. It was like something he had never done, something I had never done. But it was, at the time, it was something that we were going to be doing together. And so it felt like kind of a cool way to rebuild, our marriage at that point.
And you mentioned that you were then empty nesters. So you have three children, right?
Yes.
So they were all living, they didn't come to Delaware.
No, our youngest son had just graduated, and all of our kids went to school in Indiana.
Oh, okay.
And so we had gotten him off to school in August of 2018, and then we're empty nesters. So when we moved down here, it was just the two of us.
Okay.
So
you opened up a gym.
And it was still a season of trying to sort things out and, all the things that there are to sort out when things get a little complicated and hard. And long story short, the gym became my responsibility. Unfortunately, we were not able to save our marriage. And he moved on, and I stayed here. And I remember thinking at the time, I thought, wow, I don't know what God's going to do with this. I was overwhelmed. For most of so we had been married almost 30 years when we got divorced. And for most of that time, I had been a stay-at-home mom and supported his career. We moved around. When we moved to Delaware, it was the 15th house that we had lived in.
Oh, my goodness.
We moved around a lot.
Yeah.
And so I thought, gosh, I just don't know what God's got for me in this part of the story with the gym, because it was so hard.
And you're moving to an area that you really didn't know anybody.
I didn't know anybody. I mean, we had really, we made a big move. We gave up our home, our church, our friends, where the kids had all graduated from high school, really sacrificed a lot.
Yeah.
And So I just, at the beginning of the story, I never doubted that God had good plans for me. One of my favorite verses is Jeremiah 29:11. And I knew that God was still writing a good story for me. I was just in a really, really hard season. And I just didn't know what was going to come out of the gym. So I became the full owner of the gym.
Oh, yes, you did.
And we were still under COVID restrictions at the time.
Wow.
And so it made it even more complicated. And fortunately, right off the bat, God brought a young woman into my life who helped me run that gym. And I told her from the very beginning, I said, look, I'm going to grow this gym and I'm going to sell it and I'm going to move on with my life. And so she knew from the beginning that it was going to be, for me, a temporary solution. And she stood shoulder to shoulder with me and made a pretty challenging time pretty fun. We really tried to have some fun. I still had my job here. And so there were days where, I would be at the gym for the morning classes, come work a whole day here, and then go back for the after, it was 14-hour days. Whew. And I didn't want to give up my position here because I knew I was going to be done with the gym at some point. And I just trusted that God was going to use that for something. There was one point, maybe about a year into the gym, we decided to do a third Thursday class, and it was basically a workout class in the evenings based to worship music, and it was fun. We did that a couple times, and I just thought trying to sort out how God was going to use this, and so. Let's see, I guess eventually I did sell the gym. And at that point, I was asked to come on full-time here. And I really do think, so I had started out at the front desk and now I'm working in donor development. And I learned a lot of things at the gym that I'm able to apply to my new role here. And I don't know if that door would have been opened if I hadn't have had that experience at the gym.
You look back at that experience and you can see some good things that came from it.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah. And, I met some really neat people during that time. If I had my choice, I would have probably rather have not had to, deal with the gym, but it was really good. Looking back.
Yeah, when you think about it, we all find ourselves at one point or another in our lives in over our heads with something where we either bit off more than we could chew or we didn't see it coming. And here we are in the middle of it. And how do you press in? How do you lean in to hear God?
Right.
So is there something that really helped you through that process?
I feel like from the very beginning, I knew I had to make a decision about how I was going to walk all of this out. From the beginning of finding out, I didn't know what was going to happen with my marriage and also dealing with the gym. I could be angry and upset and frustrated, or I could just trust that God had a really good plan for me and that I might not even see the fullness of his plan for years. But I wanted to walk out whatever he had for me with integrity and honesty, and I tried to do the best that I could in that season. But it was just trusting that God is a good God, and even though circumstances are messy and complicated and don't always feel good, God is still good, and He's still on the throne, and He's still writing my story.
Amen.
Yeah.
So your job as a donor development staff member is really loving our listeners well.
Yes.
And you do that very well.
Oh, thank you.
And, sometimes I'm including myself, we're not easy to love. We're having a bad day or we're going through a trial.
Yeah.
And some things days feel like they've just short circuited. So I feel like you and Allison also works in our team in that area, and you guys do such a beautiful job of helping people to feel connected and loved.
Yeah. I mean, we all have such a need to belong. And I think the Bridge team in general does a really good job of making our Bridge community feel plugged in and connected. And, it's always a team effort.
Yes. Yeah.
So
we do have a great team.
We do.
All right. So can we talk a little bit about the hard things? Like, we know that we're made to do hard things, that God calls us to do that. When you find yourself in a position that just seems like such a struggle, what's something that you have leaned into?
I really try to focus on gratitude. I think when we focus on what we've lost, we just feel sad. Instead of focusing on what remains and being grateful for what is still there, because there's still so much good in what remains.
Amen.
And
So good.
I think I also really have learned and work really hard at trying to live unoffended, unbothered.
Yeah, talk about that a little bit.
I think there's so little in life that's worth getting really upset about. I mean, there are some things that it's okay to be angry and frustrated, but there are so many things that are just not worth the effort. And I think focusing on gratitude also leads to that posture of living unoffended, because if you're just grateful for what you have, you don't have to be bothered by little hiccups that come your way.
Yeah, so
and
good.
I heard this quote, I don't remember where it was, but being grateful makes what you have enough.
So good.
Yeah.
I actually quoted you the next morning after you shared that in our devotions. I said, a wise woman told me. So good. All right. So I promised you a story about chocolate chip cookies. And so one morning, it was Beth's turn to share devotion. And she came in with this big box, and they had brown paper bags inside. And you passed one to each of us. You set it down. You said, don't open it. You made sure everybody had one around the table. And then you said, open it and look inside. And so we all kind of peeked inside our bag. And then you said, okay, take out what's inside and put it in front of you. And so I reached into my bag and I pulled out a Ziploc baggie with half of a chocolate chip cookie in it. And I'm okay with half. I mean, it was a big cookie. So half, that was just going to be just right. Okay. But it's funny because the very next thing that was very natural for me to do is look at my neighbor, who happened to be Allison, and she had 2 whole cookies in her Ziploc bag. And it was funny because there was laughter and there was like giddiness over those who had plenty, and there was hey for those of us who had half. Yeah. And then you said something that just really kind of stopped us in our tracks.
I mean, I think when it can feel like injustice when what you expected is not what you got, and what you expected is what somebody else got. And injustice is a really hard thing, I think. I think our humanness wants some type of justice on this side of heaven. But God covers all that. He makes what you have enough. It's what you need, but comparison and comparing what you had or what you have now and it not being what you wanted or expected can feel very unjust. And injustice is just a really hard, it's the one thing in my story that I think I've struggled the most with. And that's when, like I said before, I really try to focus on being grateful for what remains. So I think I shared in that too, I told everybody to look at their cookies, and their cookie was still had sugar in it. It was still sweet.
Mm-hmm.
It still had chocolate chips. It was still made with love, and you were still going to eat it with friends. Like there was still so much good in that cookie.
Yes.
And if we can just remember that when we're going through a season that feels unjust, and sometimes you just have to sit in the injustice of your story a little bit and kind of let God sort out what the next steps are going to be.
Yeah. Yeah.
So,
wow. So I promised you a really great story, and that's the truth of that is so important because perspective plays into that as well. That age old, what we perceive is our reality,
right,
but the truth is that's not reality.
right.
God is writing our story, and only He sees the entire storyline.
Yeah. There was, I saved many quotes. I have them kind of all around my mirror in my closet. And this is one from, I believe it was one of Lysa Terkeurst's books. It says, "Girl, let go of your life. Give up control of what happens next. Get on your knees right now. Surrender where you've been and let Jesus scrub away the tears and the pain of yesterday. Turn your face to Jesus." We have plans for our lives and how we think it's all going to play out. But God's plans are even better than we think. I think, at least for me, it's my humanness that trips me up every time, thinking that something that I want or thought the way it would be was surely better than what's happening. You
had to come to a place of opening your hands.
Yeah.
And not holding things so tightly.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's not easy.
It's not easy at all. Surrender is very hard, especially when it's, my family and that wholeness was so important. When I was a young woman, I wanted to be a wife and a mom, and I loved every minute of it. And then when that looked different, it was really hard.
Yeah.
It was really hard.
Yeah. I think one time that I was going through a hard place, and that was something that I really struggled with. The dreams that I had dreamed weren't ever going to be the way that I dreamed them.
Right.
And what do you do with that? And I remember really, really having some serious conversations with God about it. And one day, writing in my journal, and I was thinking about Job, and I was thinking about Peter, two different Bible characters, obviously. One, Job encountered things that were done to him that he had no control over.
Right.
Peter denied Christ 3 times. He had total control over his reactions, and he chose that way. Both of them came out the other side. And I remember writing in my journal, they would never be the same again.
Right.
Going through those things. And I really felt like I heard God whisper over my heart, I didn't want them to stay the same.
Right.
And for me, that really helped me to get it. Like, I don't want you to stay the same. I love you the way that you are, but I have so much more for you.
Right.
It's so much bigger and better than if you just stayed here.
Right.
Would you come with me? Walk with me here.
Yeah.
And that was just such a turning point for me in a hard place.
Right.
It sounds like you've encountered that as well.
Yeah. I think we make the mistake of thinking that different is bad. But because our story looks different than what we dreamed it would be, it doesn't mean that it's bad. It's just different.
Yeah.
And God He's got it sorted out. He's filled in all the cracks.
Yeah.
It's not always easy. There were definitely times that I was hurting, and lonely.
Sure. Yeah.
And but God, it's been a good season. It took a while, but it's been a good season of renewal and moving forward and kind of living in anticipation of what's next, instead of feeling like, okay, I know God has something for me. I just got to get to the next step. And so it's kind of exciting to be at the next step that feels anticipatory.
Are you willing to dream again? Do you feel like you are?
Yeah, I do.
Good.
I do. I'm going on a trip with a friend from work, and I have a big hike planned later this year. And those are things that I probably never would have done if my life had looked how I thought it was going to be.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, yeah.
So the hard things that you've been through have carved into your heart something very strong. You know that that current that's running through all of it is that God is able
and good.
And good.
Yes.
That's so beautiful.
Yeah. Yeah. Trusting God is a lifelong journey, and we know that there's going to be hiccups in our lives. There's going to be challenges. There's going to be things that bring us to our knees.
Yeah.
And ultimately, we can choose to walk that out in faith, or we can live in fear. And the injustice of situations can push us towards fear. But if we lean in to Jesus and focus on what he still has given us, that's where we get to live in peace.
Amen.
Beautiful.
So your kiddos are now all young adults.
Yep, the young adults.
They all have their own lives.
Yep.
But you are pretty connected to your kids.
Yes. I try to see, I have two that live in Indianapolis, and then one is in Manhattan. And I try to see them as often as I can, at least every other month. So, and they do a good job of coming here. And, I was raised with very tight family connections and definitely in a family of faith. And so it was really important to me that we all still felt connected, that because things look different for them too.
Yeah.
And that they still had a tight family connection.
Yes. Isn't it interesting that as our kids grow up, we have been their parent, but then we become friends.
Yes.
And that's such a beautiful season.
Adult kids are so fun. You never stop being their parents, though.
Right.
Like, you still kind of worry about them a little bit and surely still pray for them. But it's definitely a different season, but it is fun having adult kids.
Aww.
I've enjoyed every season of being a mom, honestly.
Yeah, me too.
So,
all right, anything that we've left out that you want to share?
Let's see. I pulled a few things off my closet wall. Let's see if okay, how about this one? We see that all those harsh realities aren't the end, but rather a temporary middle space, not the place where we are meant to wallow and dwell, rather the place where we will have to learn to wrestle well. I want to learn to wrestle well in this life between the two gardens.
Oh, so
that was definitely Lysa Terkeurst. Her books really spoke deeply to me. She shared so much in those books that just were little glimmers of hope.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I just would encourage anybody who's going through a really hard season to lean into God and to focus on the gratitude of what still remains.
Yeah. And would you also say don't try to do it alone?
No, definitely don't try to do it alone.
So you had a church family?
Church family and my bridge family.
Yeah.
Like we said before, when we moved here, I didn't know anybody. I didn't have family here. Both my parents were gone at that point. My sisters both live in Delaware now, but they weren't here then. And but yes, community is definitely important, and trusted friends that you can be honest and transparent with, and that will pray with you. And how many times did I cry around sharing my heart? Friends that will let you share openly and walk with you.
Yeah. Safe spaces.
Yeah,
for sure. Well, this has been such a beautiful, hard spaces, but also a beautiful telling of something that God he's certainly not done. He's got much, much more for you. I can't wait to hear some of your adventures you've got planned later this year. And I love your advice to lean in, surround yourself with people who speak life and hope into your life. The world is always telling us the bad things.
Yes.
So find a friend or two or 10
Yep.
who surround you and speak life.
Yes.
That's so important.
Yes.
All right. One more time, share the thing about gratitude and what God has given. Focusing on gratitude.
Yes. Focusing on gratitude makes what you have enough and makes you grateful for what remains.
So good. Thank you, Beth.
Thank you for having me.
All right. Thank you for watching or listening wherever you are on podcast. If you have any questions or comments that you'd like to share, you can send those to info@wearethebridge.org. We were never meant to journey alone. Whether you're having a great day or a hard one, we need each other to celebrate and to stand in the gap. Sharing our stories helps remind us that we're not alone. And when we sit with women who sit at the feet of Jesus, the conversations are different. We walk away feeling inspired, not inferior, because we know this Christian walk is a race, but not a competition. Thank you for listening to this episode of Over the Rims of Mugs. To share a comment, suggest a topic, or ask a question, email us podcast@wearethebridge.org. And please join me for a daily devotion on my blog entitled Treasured Inside. You can find it directly at deniseharper.blog or at wearethebridge.org/devotion. Until our next sip, I'm your host, Denise Harper, encouraging you to catch up with a friend or make a new one and enjoy some good conversation over the rims of mugs.